This is Anona's Worship, Grow, Serve, Live podcast for September 1st, 2024. God's Messy Family Part 2, Promises, Promises, with Reverend Richard Landon. This is one of our sermon series episodes produced by Anona United Methodist Church. For more information and video versions, visit anona.com. And now for another great message.
Everybody say beginning, end, start, finish. And what we wrestle with is all the stuff that lies between those two words. Let me share with you three different stories. One from yesterday. Yesterday, I was here at the church, and I was going to be placing ashes for a family in our memorial garden over here on the Indian Rocks Road side of the church. And they'd brought their family to be able to celebrate that moment, which meant they brought some little kids. And some of the family was running a little bit late, and so they said, would you mind if we let the kids play out in the playground for the 10 or 15 minutes until the rest of the family gets here? And I said, absolutely, send them out. And one of the dads or two of the dads went off, and they went off and played in the playground. And as we're sitting there, we're sitting on a pew that sort of faces towards Indian Rocks Road, and all of a sudden, they're going, I think something's happening across the street. And so I turn around because I got my back to the window. I turn around and there's like all kinds of cars are stopping over there. And all of a sudden the dads are coming back up with the kids because the other family is arriving. And we think we heard a crunch, like there might have been an accident. And so I'm looking and I start to go out the door to be able to run across the street. And sure enough, there had been an accident. It was an accident involving one vehicle, a van, had veered off the road, gone through the fence, and actually crashed into the coffee shop across the street. And so I run over there, and I'm like trying to figure out what's going on, run back to get the AED. Story number two, I'm going up to go camping this past week. And as I'm heading off, I look down at my gas gauge. I'm like, oh, man, I'm on the other side of Tampa. I'm like, I've only got 33 miles to go. And so I'm going to stop at Chick-fil-A, and I'm going to get some gas, and I'll get back on the road. Well, I start, I'm going down the road. I've got my order for Chick-fil-A is going to be ready, and I call up one of my good friends named David Sneed, who's going to put his hand up right over here. Yeah, put your hand up. You have to admit who you are, all right, because this is all his fault, okay? So I pull over to Chick-fil-A. We're talking on the phone. I don't hang up the whole time, talking to him as we're going to get the Chick-fil-A stuff, and I come walking back out, still talking to him, get into my truck, and I get back on the interstate, and I'm driving along. We finish talking. Okay, so everything was wonderful. I'm talking to you. I call my wife, and I'm driving down the road, and I look down, and the range, anybody have the range thing on your phone? It says how much more range you got? Mine said range 0. I had 0 left to go. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm talking to Landon, she's getting all anxiety. So I look over at my little Google Maps thing on the screen on the truck, and I'm looking for an exit, and there was not one nearby, because I'm like, start scrolling to try and say, where's that going to be? Story number 3. This goes back in time, all right? So back in my history, if you got the finance letter, you heard a little bit about me working at McDonald's back in my younger days. And so during that time, I worked at a variety of different McDonald's all over. So there used to be one in Bel Air Bluffs. I worked at the one on Walsingham. I worked at several down in St. Pete, some in Pinellas Park. I got bounced around. Well, while I was in St. Pete, there was a night where something happened. So at the end of the night, whenever you closed the store back then, it was before these things, all right? So before these things, for those of you who don't know, there was a time before these, all right? And there was a thing called payphones. Anybody remember payphones, right? All right, so they used to be like a dime or a quarter. They moved up to a quarter, and then they went away because of these things. Well, because we didn't have these things, one of the security protocols at McDonald's was, I'm the manager of the store, right? And I've got my crew, I've got a swing manager that's there, so an hourly manager. And when you close down at the very end of the night, you let one person out the door and you shut it and you lock it, okay? So you got a key, you're locking the door. That person goes out. They get into their car, they drive up to the end of the driveway so that if somebody comes into the store, forces us back into the store, that person can drive off to a pay telephone to let the police know that you're being robbed, okay? So that was the procedure that you would normally follow. So I'm trying to get the door unlocked. It was having a little sticky issue, and I opened the door to let that person out, and the particular store I was in no longer exists. It's US 19 and Central Avenue in that area. And in front of me would be the dumpster for the store, okay? So like there's a dumpster, there's a wall that goes around the dumpster, and out of the dumpster come two people, one of them with a gun. And as they're coming, they're running towards me, and they're like, do not shut that door. And I said, okay, I won't shut the door. And so I let them in, and they get inside the store, and the crew and the swing manager, they're all lined up in front of me, and he's got his arm around my neck like this with a gun to my head. What we want is to know the rest of the story. You want to know what happened across the street. You want to know what happened at McDonald's, right? You want to know what happened with the empty tank. Every one of us wants to know. And we even have these things that sort of look like this. They're called remote controls. Anybody have one of those at home? All right, how many of you subscribe to like Netflix or Prime or something like that? Have you noticed a change has happened? All right, you used to pay to avoid the pauses in the story. You used to pay to be able to say, you know what, I've got Netflix. I don't have to have interruptions in my viewing schedule anymore. That's the promise. I'm paying in order to have Netflix or Prime, and I don't have to stop anymore for commercials. This is the commercial part of the story, okay? So they took that away from us because now they charge you even if there's commercials. Right? And what they said was, if you still don't want commercials, we'll just charge you some more. But even if you have commercials, by the way, because we're loving, kind companies, we won't show you as long a commercials as you would get on network TV. But we want to go from here, from start all the way to finish. Right? We want to know the beginning of the story, and as soon as it gets a little tension in it, it's like we want to jump over here and we want to be hearing the end of the story. We don't want to have to wait for the story, so we'll even pay to have it stop where it doesn't stop. The story keeps unfolding. Not only that, if I need to, I can fast forward. I can fast forward over it so that I can actually get to the place that I want to be able to get to be able to see the end of the story. What we're looking at as we're going through this series is the story of Abram and Sarai, who becomes Abraham and Sarah. And we're going from the beginning of the story today into the middle of the story. And I'm going to start off with the beginning, but we don't get all the way to the end. We don't get to hear the promise. And the idea is that if you haven't heard the story, then we sort of stop and you're like, well, did it get fulfilled? But most of us might know the story because you've heard it before. But I want you to put yourselves in the minds of people who were hearing the story for the first time. And they're wrestling with, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening to this couple. So here's what it says at the beginning of Abraham's story, chapter 12, Genesis. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country, your kindred, your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took his wife Sarai and his brother's son Lot, and all the possessions that they'd gathered, and the persons whom they'd acquired in Haran, and they set forth to go to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring, to your children, to the children you don't have yet because your wife can't bear children, to your children I will give this land. So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared from him. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our Lord endures forever. I will make of you a great nation. I'll make of you a great nation. In your offspring, I'm going to give them this land. Did you hear how old Abraham was in this story? Do you hear it? How old? 75. Any of you at 75 out there thinking about having kids right now? Right? Sarai is 65 years old. Any women out there saying, I'm ready for children at 65 years old? Right? It's not something that you're expecting. Sometimes the Bible's a little weird. You can look at it, everybody say, sometimes the Bible is weird. Go ahead. You can say that because you're looking at it like, really? 65, 75 years old, and they're actually going through this moment where they're thinking about kids. This is the beginning of the story. And what I want us to do is to be able to keep moving and saying, that's just the beginning. That's the start. It's not the end of the story. It's not even the middle of the story. It's the very beginning. But if you just turn over just a few pages and you pop over to chapter 16, you start to realize that the promise of a child, it ain't happening. 75, 65. Now it's almost, now that's funny. Huh? There's a child, right? All right, so 65 and 75 years old, and they're wrestling with this whole thing. And now it's going to be nearly 10 years later when you get into chapter 16, when Sarai, Abram's wife, says, I can't wait any longer. I can't. And Abram's like, I know, it's so hard. I can't wait either. And so Sarai says, I've got a servant. I've got this woman named Hagar that I want to give to you so that she can bear a child. Another weird thing from the Bible, okay? Because that happened back in these times, okay? So she's got this servant, and Abram says, I would never do that to you, honey. I'm faithful only to you. Not at all. He says, oh, a younger woman? Sure, I'll sleep with her, right? And so they end up having a child, and they end up having a child, Ishmael. And Ishmael is born, and when Ishmael is born, you can picture Abram and Sarai going, this is it. We thought it was Eliezer. We thought that this other person in the house who really wasn't a part of the family, he was the one who was going to get all of my possessions when I die, but it's not him. It's going to be one of my own blood. It's going to be Ishmael. He's the one who's going to get this. This is the answer to our prayer. And in this moment, this is our story. Okay, this is our story. We get to the place where in our lives, we're going through something where we're having to wait. We're having to wait, and we don't like waiting. I want what I want, and I want it when I want it, and I need something, and I need it now. I need this answer to prayer. I need this problem to be solved. I need to be able to be over whatever circumstance I'm going through. That's what's happening here. That's what's happening here. And so they come up with their own solution. And this is this is God's answer to my prayer. And God in this moment is saying, no, it's not. That Ishmael, beautiful child, that is not the answer to the prayer. The prayer is that Sarai would have a child. Not Sarai through her servant Hagar, but that Sarai would have the child. And I get it, you've now been waiting for 10 years, which means they're not 65 and 75. Do the math, they are. Any 75-year-olds out there ready to have children for the first time? No. Bible's weird. That's the story that's happening here, though. They're wrestling with this, and they're like, this is not the answer to the prayer. You need to, Abram and Sarah. You need to listen to me. You need to trust me. You need to give me the remote control. Give me the remote control. Do you trust me enough to hand it over and say, you don't need to fast forward to the end, even though it is hard, even though it's hard. In Mark 4, if you turn over into the New Testament, you get a story that I think sort of relates to this. It's a story where Jesus is teaching people, right? Just all kinds of people. The whole chapter is about him teaching different people in different areas. And he gets to the end of the day and he turns to his disciples and he says to his disciples, get the boat, go ahead and get the boat and let us go to the other side. Let us go to the other side. And so they get the boat and there's a bunch of other boats around. And some of the people are getting in those boats. And what do you think happens in that moment? Jesus gets on the boat, and do you know what he does? He falls asleep. He just goes to sleep. And in the midst of his sleeping, guess what happens? A storm. A big storm arises, and they're afraid for their lives. It says we're on the verge of perishing. We could die in the midst of this moment. The boat was already being swamped, but he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion, even in the midst of the storm. And so they have to wake him up. And they said to him, teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? He woke up, he rebuked the wind. He said to the sea, peace, be still. The wind ceased. There was dead calm. And he said to them, why? Why are you afraid? Why are you afraid? Why do you still have no faith? And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? Have you ever said those words about God? And you're wondering which words, Richard? There's 3 words in this passage that I read that if we're honest, sometimes maybe we ask. He's in the stern, he's asleep. They woke up to woke him up to be able to say, can't you handle this? Teacher, do you not care? Do you not care? Do you not care that we're perishing for them? For us, you might be saying different things in the midst of do not care as they wake them up. Do you not care that I lost my job? Do you not care that I've got cancer? Do you not care that my parents are divorcing? Do you not care that my marriage is falling apart? Do you not care that depression is crushing me? Do you not care that my kids won't talk to me, that I can't stop drinking, that I can't stop doing the drugs, I can't stop watching the stuff on the internet? My finances are crumbling. Do you not care? Do you not care? What we want, guys, is to know the end of the story before we know the end of the story. We want to know that in the midst of whatever struggle that you're facing, whatever fear is overwhelming you, whatever doubt is consuming you, that it's going to be okay at the end, that you can actually see it, not just that it's going to be okay, but you actually know what's going to happen so that you can be comfortable in the midst of the storm. That's what we hope for. Linda and I, we're getting ready to go on vacation next month. We're heading up to camp in the Smoky Mountains. And there's this thing called the All Trails app. And on that All Trails app, it'll tell you. So I was like, let me pull that up. I'm going to see what type of hikes we might be able to do. There is 394 hikes in and around the Smoky Mountains that I can do, okay? We have done all but 5 of those. Or was it, we've only done 5 of those. That was it. We've done 5 of those, okay? So there's 394 different possibilities for where we could go. Are you tracking with me on the All Trails app? Not only that, the All Trails app won't just say how many there are. They'll say how hard they are. So there's easy, there's moderate, and there's difficult. So I've got these 3 options. There's how long is this trail? Can I bring my dog? Can I ride my bike? Is it paved? Is it not paved? Does it grow up in elevation? Does it go down in elevation? It provides all the details I want about any one of the trails that I might take. It'll even track me as I'm walking, okay? So as we're walking, holding hands together through the woods romantically, okay, we'll get off that subject. All right, so as we're walking through the woods, it'll say if I've gotten off the trail. Like if I took a wrong turn, it'll say, hey, beep, get back on the trail. You got off the trail, get back onto the trail. Make sure you don't get lost. This will get you back on the trail. That, I think, is not just what I want for my all trails hikes. That's what I want for my life. Anybody? Right? You want to be able to say, oh, you know what? I choose, let's see, easy, paved, beautiful views, bike ride, and by the way, I'm riding my electric bike, right? When we look, this is the story that we want. We want to be able to pick. We want to be able to pick what trail. We want to pick what the trail is like. And yet none of that happens. This book right here, this book will show you that oftentimes, what God gives us isn't the easy road, it's the difficult road. It's the difficult road. It's the road that we wouldn't choose for ourselves, and yet somehow, some way, that's the direction we have to go. Moses has to go before the Pharaoh in order to answer his calling. He's called by God. Okay, get this. He's called by God to go face the Pharaoh. He has to go face the Pharaoh and say, set my people free. But before he even goes, you know what God says to him? I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. So when you go and ask, you know what he's going to say? No. But go ask anyway. Go ask anyway. Even though he's going to say no, I need you to go. I need you to walk over to the Pharaoh and say, set my people free. And he's going to say, no, do it. In essence, saying the thing you're going to try to do, even though I'm telling you to do it, you're going to fail. It's not going to work. It's not going to work the first time. It's not going to work the second time. It's going to take multiple times before it actually gets to the place. Moses doesn't know all that. He doesn't know at the end that there's going to be an answer, that's going to be a yes, and that the people are going to go free, and then therefore everything's going to be wonderful right after that. Or, wait a minute, now he's on the edge of the Red Sea, and there's this army coming towards him, and God's like, don't face the army, just walk through the water. It'll split apart. He has to constantly, over and over and over again, he has to face challenge after challenge, whether it's from circumstances like that or later on with his own people who doubt him, who question him, who don't understand what it is that he's calling them to do. Gideon, if you're familiar with the story of Gideon's got an army at his disposal, 32,000 men to be able to face another army with tens of thousands of people. And with that, he's got some confidence. I can do this. At least I've got this army with me. There's a chance for this to actually be able to work. God shows up and says, tell you what, let's take that 32,000 and we're going to just reduce it a little bit, okay? Just a little bit. Let's take it down to, I don't know, what do you say, Gideon, 300? 300 enough? How about we take 300 and we face the tens of thousands? That's what happens. Story after story. Esther, right? Esther has to actually face Haman. David has to face Goliath. Daniel has to face the lions. Paul will be in prison. Jesus has to face the cross. And what we want to do is get all the way to the resurrection, but he has to go through the cross. And guys, if these characters, if these people in the Bible, if Moses, if Gideon, if Esther, if David, if Daniel, if Paul, if Jesus, if they're not exempt from the messy middle, we aren't either. We're not either. You're going to face stuff, and you have already. And maybe you're in the midst of it right now where it's like you do not see a way out. What do you do with that? You get to the place where, in spite of all these things, you need to hear the good news. And this is the good news. This comes from John 16:33, where Jesus says, in this world, you will have what? Yeah, say it louder. Trouble. In this world, you will have trouble. You will have trouble if I was thinking of Abram and Sarai. You will have trouble bearing children. If you're a parent, you'll have trouble raising children. Can I get an amen? Right? Right? Holding jobs, getting sick, fighting depression, wrestling with addiction. But it doesn't stop with, in this world, you will have trouble. It says, but take heart. Take heart. I have overcome the world. Abraham, Sarai, you need to understand. Ishmael, he is not the answer. Disciples, did you hear me? Did you hear what I said? I said, let you and I get on a boat. Let's get on a boat together. And what I want to do, we're going to go to the other side. Did you not hear me say, let's get a boat and go to the other side? Let us go to the other side. He's saying in the very beginning, we'll get to where? The other side. We're going to get to the other side. And I don't care what rises up, what storm rises up, what other boats might collide with us. We're going to get to the other side. We're going to get there. The storm is not the end of the story. The storm's not. The middle of the story is not the end of the story. And what he's saying is, do you trust me? Do you trust me in the midst of the fear, of the anguish, of the whatever it is that you're going through? Do you trust me? Do you believe that I care? Do you believe that I care about you, that I want what's best for you? And I realize you're going through moments of hell. I know you're going through moments of difficulty. I know that you're going to struggle, but do you trust that I am with you in the boat, even as you're facing the storm? And even if you think I'm asleep, I'm still with you. The range on my dash shows 0. The van crashed into the house. There's a gun at my head. I'll see you next week. And we'll finish those stories. The gift of Abram and Sarai is the gift of the messy middle that we live in most of the time. And we need to recognize the most of the time part of that. But the middle of the story is not the end of the story. God bless you. Go in peace. Amen.
If you found this message meaningful, share it with others. To find more great episodes and stay up to date, subscribe to Anona United Methodist Church's podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere you find your favorite podcast shows. In addition, subscribe to our channel on YouTube and find the community on Facebook at facebook.com/Anona Church. You can join us on our campus in Largo, Florida, and discover new ways to reach out to the Pinellas County community. Be a part of the Anona Church family as we worship, grow, serve, and live.